Hi, welcome to another edition of Education Matters. I'm Ray Pinney. I'll be your host for this afternoon's podcast. I'm really looking forward to this one because this is going to be a little bit different than our other podcasts. We're going to be discussing the partnership between labor and management at a county-wide level. With me today is Sue Genchos. She's the president of the Passaic County Education Association, at least for the next few months. And she's a friend of mine, so I'm putting my we've known each other for a long time. So, welcome, Sue. How are you?
Thanks, Ray. It's great to be here. It's good to see you, and I'm well.
Okay. Just I'm going to set the stage for this conversation because, um, for those who don't know, sometimes you think that the union and management, the school boards, there are things where they're not in total agreement with, but because it's a natural adversary relationship, especially when it comes to negotiations. But when there are issues that you can come together on. And so in Passaic County, the Passaic County Education Association and the Passaic County School Board Association work together. And Sue, I'll give it to you as president. How long have you been president? I forget now. It's been so long.
Well, 8 years.
Eight
So
years.
yeah. And yeah, I'll echo your opening remarks, Ray, about the adversarial nature that our relationship can take. And we do sit across from each other at the bargaining table, but when we are focused, we focus on public education, right? The title of your podcast says it all: education matters. And that's, I think, where we find common ground. As you mentioned, in Passaic County, there are a couple of things that we work together with the School Boards Association, Passaic County SBA, on. And one of those programs is Unsung Heroes. We recently, in March, we held an event where we asked every high school, to nominate a senior who is someone that may not be recognized in a traditional way, right? There are events that recognize National Honor Society students and valedictorians and student athletes, but the unsung hero may be somebody that is a community volunteer, maybe an EMT. It may be someone that has overcome real personal challenges to make it to their senior year of high school. And so we partner with Passaic County School Boards Association on putting together that program. And it's something that our association leaders, our school board members, our superintendents, really, we love getting together to honor these students and hear their stories.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's important that you're there to help celebrate children. And I think it's the children also, the students, that is why people got into education.
Right.
You want to make a difference, and then you see these students, and it's like you see how the staff member made a difference in their life, and how the student made a difference and motivated the teachers. It's a
Yes.
great program, um, and we'll get into more of our joint program. I do want to mention though one thing. I can't talk about this because you've been there 8 years, but we do have to put a little thank you note for your predecessor,
Absolutely.
Joseph Chef, because Joe. I only call him Joseph when I'm mad at him. So, but Joe came up to me and we started talking about doing a joint program together, and he pushed for it, and it became part of the practice of both associations to sit there and discuss a topic. It used to be we would try to find a topic that was mutually
Mhm.
of interest to everyone and didn't really separate us out. Not always easy during certain times when they were doing changing the teacher evaluation platforms and things of that sort. But I think it became a matter of practice in both groups. I can't speak for your membership, but I know our membership, when they got to their summer meeting, said, "What are we going to do?" They already had it on their calendar. It wasn't
Mhm.
something that we were going to argue about whether we should do this. Is it a good idea? It was like it just became kind of part of our practice, and I didn't have any pushback from any of the officers because our officers change.
Yeah, right. I don't know if you remember when it started, but I went through the files and I discovered one agenda from 2003. So I don't know if that's the first agenda, but it goes we can say as far back, right, at least to 2003. And I will share with you that the general topic was school financing and budgetary issues in Passaic County. It feels like we could have that very same panel today. Um, and in fact, we had Dr. Spirito, who is retiring as the Hawthorne superintendent. He presented the impact of flat state aid on education and
Yep.
property taxes.
Actually, it was his father who presented that, bro.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yes, it was his father.
Okay. So I'm going to turn into the questioner. Was this the first?
That might have been. We used to have, I told you this before, the NJEA, NJSBA president come in,
Okay.
and they would talk to both membership. And then we went to this program. And actually, school funding was one that we kind of had an agreement on. It wasn't like
Right.
we were, in disagreement on that. So that was, yes, that probably would have been the first one. And we always had a good relationship with the Superintendents Association, too.
Right, right. And yeah, I mean, there are other areas we agree on as well. I think we worked together on the health benefits issue, moving from Chapter 78 to Chapter 44, because, our superintendents are, um, they're also in the health plan. And it's one of those things that it is negotiable, but it was so egregious that it really hurt the profession, to have teachers paying tens of thousands of dollars from their salary into health benefits. So uh, I don't know if the school board's folks share that opinion, but
It depends on the district. But I will say this. I will say that we at one point did do teacher evaluations. If you remember when they were changing the teacher evaluation, and that was probably the most difficult one.
I can see that.
And
Yes.
because there was like, you were changing the evaluation form, and the teachers had a lot of pushback against that. And I remember Joe and I having a lot of conversations about that. It doesn't look as crazy as it does now, but at the time it was really a difficult situation. But everyone handled it very well. And I think a benefit of putting school board members and the teachers together is I think it expands everyone's knowledge of another side. Because a lot of times in the district, the only union members I know are their union members, and the union members' only board they know is their board. And now they start to see things throughout the county. And I think that's a learning experience for membership of both sides.
Right. You can certainly learn a different perspective and practice. I do remember the evaluation change very well because, quite frankly, Ray, we went from a system that was check marked, excellent, satisfactory, unsatisfactory, to a very detailed, um, assessment of many realms of teaching. And that was a huge change. So it was very challenging, and learning from other districts, other colleagues, kind of how they do things in their home district. I think it helps us kind of work through the kinks. But it was a very difficult time. I'm not quite sure I or my colleagues are over it.
Well, I think though, as hopefully the people that are watching this, no one changed their opinion from their association's perspective, but I think they were respectful of other people's opinion. They said,
Right.
"Okay, I understand where they're coming from. We're not going to spend an hour and a half trying to change someone's mind." And but reaching across the aisle like that, and I think it's more important now than probably
Mm.
even when we started it. Uh, I think it leads you to come to agreement in other areas because you're trying to find areas of mutual benefit. And where there's an agreement, I think that's a powerful tool. Uh, the unsung hero students being just a small example of that. What's your thought?
I agree. And another agenda that I found was from 2019, Ray, where we looked at school safety and security. We had a panel.
That's right.
And I remember that meeting well, and I think there's no doubt that that's something that's of primary importance to both the school boards and the educators and the associations. We want to keep our educators and our students safe. And one of the things that Joe said, and that I like to say, is that teacher working conditions are student learning conditions. And when you frame our situation that way, we are absolutely on the same page.
Yes, yes. And that was there was one other topic that just went out of my head that I thought was and we did one on gangs many years ago
Okay.
too in school. The one thing I do want to say is maybe you should give a flavor for people who are from outside of Passaic County, the demographics of Passaic County, because it's a pretty diverse county.
Mm-hmm.
We have some urban districts, we have some wealthy suburban districts, and so it's kind of a different type of county.
I do find that to be true when I talk to other county leaders. We have, for example, West Milford, which I think can be categorized as rural. And if you head down Route 23, it'll take you to Wayne, which probably is considered a suburb. On the wealthier side, and then we have. If you continue, then you can take 23 to 80 and head into Patterson, which is definitely an urban environment. And we do have that diversity in terms of the demographics of the towns, the types of towns and cities that are in the county. And so I guess we're always compromising when we deal with different topics in our own ranks. And so we want to learn, and are open to the panel that you and Joe started years ago, um, to have those conversations about the variety of experiences.
I think one of the other topics we had, and I think this will play into something else. We had the discussion for people from Rutgers about the labor management collaborative,
Mm.
where district, the union, and the board and the administration kind of have a collaborative decision making. I believe that was taken up somewhere in Passaic County.
Yes, Clifton, the association, under the superintendent is Dr. Robertosi, and the association leader is Lori Lalama. I'm not sure who's the president of the school board now, but that has been something they've been working on. I want to say for about 5 years now. You know, I can't swear to that, but it does. There's a process involved, and it creates a structure in which the collaboration can happen. So it's not just a matter of getting together, having a talk, having relationships, which is all important and part of the structure, but they've created a system to, facilitate those relationships in order to make decisions that is made with input from all sides.
Yes, but that takes the leadership of all the entities to be on board.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have 2 out of 3. You need to have, from my perspective, I think you need to have 3 out of 3. I think and not just the leadership, but the other people, all the other officers at in the union, and also the entire board, not just the board president. And I know the superintendent there, and I know he believes in that collaborative type leadership.
That's right. There are districts that it hasn't taken off in, that, one entity or another wanted to discuss it, wanted to look into it, and it didn't happen. You need just the right people and environment to put that structure into place when it's not already there.
Uh, I'm going to get back to your membership. When you put them together, I mean, when you discuss what you're going to do, now I know the unsung hero, I think, was like a slam dunk after you did it the first year. I think it was like, okay, we know what we're doing. Let's make it bigger and better every year. It was basically, I think, everyone's reaction. And I think they did enjoy working with our association. I felt a good relationship on this type of topic. Um, what did you? How do you feel it benefits your membership having this type of partnership?
Oh, it's such a great question. I think that first of all, it puts the students at the forefront of our work, which we it that has to be. That is, without the students, none of us are doing this work. So the Unsung Heroes program, emphasizes that. I think also it gives us an opportunity to work together in a different way. And so it lets us talk to each other and see each other in a different way. So I I don't have any. I love data. I'm a history teacher and I love to have evidence. And I don't know that I have a solid piece of evidence in terms of this is how it benefited our members, other than it continues to provide opportunities to work together. And when we are standing next to each other, instead of, maybe sitting across from each other, I think that that helps our members and our work.
Uh, from our membership, what I could sense from my point of view is, I think they're like when you have like the teacher of the year, a board member always remembers, oh yeah, I voted for that teacher. So I think they're proud of their teachers in their school. I know it's hard when you get to negotiations because there's always limited funds and it's a difficult situation. But I think it allows them to see the teachers in a different light, um, and it allows them to see them as humans.
Mhm.
Sometimes we don't when we sit across from people, we only see their role. We don't see them as a person, and so now I think we tend to see people,
Mhm.
not as a label. And sometimes we like to label people in our society. This is just my personal opinion. It's not our association, but we like to label people and say, you
Well,
know, that's a union leader. They're always going to do that, or that's a school board member. I think when people start to see each other as a person, that changes it takes the edge off, I guess, a little. At least that's my personal opinion.
I would agree with that. And there's reasons we do that, right? There's evolutionary reasons that we put people in categories. And so we have to remind ourselves that we're in a different time than we were 10,000, 15,000 years ago. And it's important to uh, have conversations and see people as individuals and not as their title.
How did Joe trans? How did you transition to this program? Because it was Joe's baby, but
Mhm.
Joe kind of did what he wanted to do as president. Um, but he really respected you at that, I know, and he transitioned to you. So how did that transition work?
You know, it's a great question, right? And what I think it speaks, the reason the program is successful does speak to Joe's leadership, because Joe was a county president and retiree that believed in bringing people along, preparing them. When I was vice president, he would frequently call me and say, I have another opportunity for you. So he really prepared me to take on the role. And for example, he introduced us. He didn't just retire and leave things hanging. He made sure that we knew who we were. And then I have to give you credit, right? Because then, you gave me the call and said, hey, Joe and I used to meet to talk about this panel. Would you like to do that? Would you like to continue? So there was a lot of reinforcement from you, from the organization, and prepared by Joe that it was just a part of our kind of DNA at that point.
Yeah, I remember having lunch with you. The first before COVID, I
Yeah.
guess it was.
Yeah.
um, that was a whole other issue. But I think the important part about that is the leadership transition, because sometimes when a leader changes, a lot more changes.
Hmm.
Programs that you thought were success, even in the school, a
Yep.
principal may have a great program, and then the principal leaves, and the next
It falls apart.
successor doesn't put as much value on it.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it is important that the leadership find out what's important to its membership. And both associations say, yeah, we're going to continue this. And I did ask our membership. I said, we're still going to try to keep this relationship going. I said, I don't really know Sue, but we did get to know each other. And I actually think on a personal, I'll thank you on this. Um, we got to know each other's membership a little bit better by having a lunch and talking about, well, how does your association see these issues? What are your members saying? And I think that's a learning experience for people who are in leadership positions to have a conversation from someone in a different position.
I will say that every time we had one of those panels, you know, the next time I would see one of the leaders that attended, they would express that they learned something. And right now, what I have in mind is the security panel where they talked about vaping. And, we take it for granted now. It was not that in 2019. It wasn't, we didn't know a lot about that. I mean, maybe the kids did and we were catching up, but that was something, at least for me, that was like, wow, we've got to do something about this. So every time we did have a panel, a leader would say, that was really great. I learned something. I learned this. So, we have to keep learning. That's the only way we're going to keep in touch with our students. They're moving at leaps and bounds.
Well, maybe next year you won't be around, but I know you. I know your successor, and I'm sure he's going to continue. But there are issues like that
Mhm.
maybe everyone's learning together.
Yeah.
Cell phones in schools,
Yeah.
AI.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that are like popping up, and there's not a lot of history behind any of them.
Right.
And so we have to create a policy. You have to explain what's happening in your classroom. So, and it may vary from grade level to grade level and school district to school district. At least that's what tends to happen in almost every issue that we have.
Right. Right.
I'm going to ask you a hard question.
Okay, I'm ready.
Well, actually, before I do that, how long were you? Where were you a teacher? For those people who don't know.
Yeah, so I started teaching at Passaic High School in 1992, and that's where I spent my whole career. So when I became vice president of Passaic County Education Associations in 2012, and once Joe retired, which was it was 2017, the summer of 2017, that's when I became the president. So when I became president, I went on what we call full-time release. And so that's a program where the union leader is released from the classroom and we reimburse the district for the salary. So that also, that allows me to do some of the things that I do because, it would be challenging to have all the programs and the registration and the events, the workshops, without some full-time hands-on.
Okay, the difficult question that was easy. If someone from another county asked you, how do you make it work? How do you continue to build these bridges? What advice would you give them?
I would say lean into the difficult conversations. I think whenever there is something that you want to do, you want to try, even when it's, dismissed at first, I think having conversations, they're not always all difficult, but if they are, lean into it, uh, because as we've been talking about this whole time, seeing another's perspective can, lead to a successful outcome, especially when it puts students at the center of it and, can foster other areas of collaboration.
Yeah, I would, thinking about it, and I'm making this up as I go along, but that's been my life for the most part. So I would say the leaders have to come together personally
Mm,
and not without an agenda. I think too many people come in with an agenda, and
mm,
the agenda is to be open. How can we learn from each other? How can we help our kids, as you said, and where can we find that common ground? And if you were going to start it on an issue where there's probably a little bit more agreement
Hmm.
than on, you know, I wouldn't go like we went to teacher evaluation. We didn't do that the first year. That could have ended it. But
Hmm.
after 5, 6 years, you can go to something like that, but not the first year. I think the first year is more learning opportunities for the membership, keeping it kind of light, and then the leadership from both have to communicate with each other in a very respectful manner.
Well, and as you pointed out, our panels, they're high level, right? The devil's in the details, and that's for districts to hash out, right, based on contract language. We are not superseding any of that. We are offering perspectives, maybe some ideas, to inform those conversations or those negotiations. So just to be clear, it definitely was a high level sort of conversation, as we mentioned before.
Yeah, we would sometimes have someone from NJEA come, someone from our association, and maybe DOE or
Mm-hmm.
another group come, and they were at very high levels, and it was
Mm-hmm.
usually something where I think people from both sides came out with a learning opportunity that they didn't have beforehand, um, because uh, I'll take an example of AI.
Yeah.
Maybe teachers are talking about it. I'm sure they're talking about it in their classrooms, in the one, in their faculty rooms, and at their union meetings, and we're talking about it. But maybe we should be talking about it together a little bit, just so you get a broader view of the entire subject.
Well, and as you pointed out, right, like you need a little experience with it before you can even talk about it. And I'll tell you, they're using it.
Oh
We
yeah, that
we have
I've been doing
workshops on it.
programs on it, and
Yeah,
it's not like whether it's going to be here. It's how
it's
you're
here.
going to use it. It's here. So, but
Absolutely.
those are the type of things where I think people have to like use it as a learning opportunity,
Hmm.
and not rush to judgment. And but I would say, from my experience, people on both sides have been very open. I will add one thing. Passaic County kind of has this culture, not just between those two groups. I think the Superintendents Association, you guys work together on the Ed Council. Why don't you
Yeah,
describe that?
I looked that up too, and I believe it's since 1984.
Yeah,
There's been the
it was way
education.
before me. That I know.
Yeah, yeah, it's the Educational Council of Passaic County, and by constitution, it is co-chaired by the county superintendent and the president of PCEA. And so they have certain, they offer scholarships, so they do some fundraising for scholarships. We have a program where we have a breakfast that honors the valedictorians and salutatorians of the county. So, that's very, very special to the students and their parents and the districts. And we also have had programs to honor the teacher of the year. So just recently, last week, we had a breakfast hosted by West Milford High School, and it was lovely. It's really special to honor those people that are, you know, going above and beyond. And
Yeah, and for
yeah,
those
so
that
that's
don't
the
know,
ECPC. We call it the ECPC. Yeah,
yeah,
the Educational Council of Passaic County.
yeah, and they do a lot of great work, and it's all the education groups, the superintendents, the BAs, they
Mhm.
all are
Right.
participating in this, and it's just part of their practice every day of doing something like that. Um, that's what they do in the county, and it's part of, if you're a association leader, that's one of the things that you have to take on.
Right.
Uh, so I do want to thank you because we're coming to the end of our time. I know you'll be leaving this position. I will say I've always enjoyed working with you. And I know the county coordinator in Passaic County, Rob, just loves work. And actually, we're going to have two Robs now.
Right.
And,
Right.
and your your successor's name is Rob. And
Right.
so I think we have done a good job in passing the torch on to people to keep it important. And but I do want to thank you because you've done a lot of great things in Passaic County. I know the county is going to miss you,
I
and
appreciate that.
I'm going to miss having a conversation. So when I go down to South Jersey, I know you're moving there. I'm going to look you up.
I appreciate that, Ray. It's been really fun working with you and with school boards. And, it's not what I maybe thought I'd be, doing as as the leader, as the county leader, but like it was definitely, or county union leader. It was definitely something fun and worth doing. So I look forward to seeing how
I
the
think, you know what? I
done.
think that's the last point we should make. We actually had fun.
We
You
did.
know, we had serious issues, and we discussed serious topics.
Hmm.
But then when you get to know the person, you kind of have fun with them.
Hmm.
And, you know, we can make fun of where, look, I'll give you an example. I used to be a teacher. I don't know if you even knew that.
I didn't
And
know.
a social studies teacher. That's
Oh,
why you like me.
one of my people. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, when Joe found out, he goes, "Oh, Ray, you went to the dark side." So, and you can picture Joe saying that.
I absolutely can. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but we had fun, and I think that's the lesson. But we had fun, but we had serious discussion. So this, you know,
Hmm.
you heard some of the topics we took on, but
Right.
I think when you bring it down to the people, it makes a difference. And if anyone gets anything out of this, it's possible to cross those aisles, um,
Yeah.
and get to know people with different opinions, and actually have a friendship with them.
Hmm.
And so I hope, if that happens in one other county, I'd be very happy. And Sue, good luck in your retirement. And that brings us to end to this Education Matters.
Thanks for having me, Ray.